G'day, everybody, and welcome to another DUC Migrating to Australia podcast. My name's Wes Zan, and I'm joined by Daisy Ayres. So, Daisy, welcome.
Hi, Wes. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure. So, yeah, Daisy, cheers for joining, because yours is a little bit of an interesting story. You're in the UK, I'm in Melbourne, while we're recording this podcast. Your visa isn't granted yet. Is your state nomination being granted?
State nomination. So we've lodged our visa, but we're waiting for the approval.
Perfect. And when was your state, and when were you approved for state nomination?
So we were approved at the end of October 2023, and we lodged in November 2023.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, we moved pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So, but there's more to you, I guess, Daisy. So you're currently in the UK, but we want to hear about, your partner Aaron's the main applicant. So we'll come back to that in a minute. And my understanding is you're going to head to the Gold Coast. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the plan.
Perfect. But you've already been to Australia twice before, and you backpacked through the East Coast. And the second time you were in South Australia, and that's when you met Aaron while on the working holiday visa. So
Yes.
usually when we do podcasts and everything, we're sort of interviewing people when they're in Australia, but I sort of wanted to interview you to sort of see your emotional side where you're at now, but also see what the drive was for getting to, for getting here to Oz and when you come here. So let's get straight into it. So we touched on we touched on the fact you've already been here twice. Run us through. How was that?
Yeah, so I don't know where it came from, but I always had an obsession with Australia. I don't know why, because I didn't know anyone that had been or anyone that had lived there, but I always wanted to visit. And I was always planning to go to university after I studied A levels. And I decided one day to walk into a travel agent's and find out about taking a gap year. And the lady spoke to me about Australia. I didn't actually speak about any other countries. And I kind of went home and said, I'm taking a gap year, going to travel in Australia, and then I'll go to uni after that. And that was probably a bit of a shock to my parents because it came out of the blue. But that was that, and that was what I decided to do. So I got a job, saved up, and I went to travel the East Coast and just fell in love with it. Really just loved every single minute of my time there.
Where did you start on the East Coast? Do you remember?
Sydney. Yeah,
Okay.
Sydney.
And how far up the East Coast did you end up?
So I went up to Cairns.
Nice.
And did obviously everything in between.
Yeah, well, there's a lot in between. I think when people think, like East Coast and Cairns, but it takes, you can really cruise if you want. And how long were you, from that area, how long time was it?
I did it in 8 weeks.
8 weeks, nice. So I'm going to take a wild stab here, Daisy, because I've done that stretch a few times. And let me see if your places are going to, I don't know, gel with areas that I probably would have went to. Okay.
Yep.
Well, I'm tipping you arrived in Sydney, which would have been good. You would have spent maybe a few days in Sydney, maybe a week. Is that correct?
I probably did. I think it's about 4 days in Sydney.
I knew I was going to blow it in the first one. But anyway, and then I'm tipping, would you have went to Newcastle?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you go so you went to the East Coast. So you probably would have done, actually, rather than me guessing, because there's so many nice spots, you explain.
From the top of my head, because this is going back now about, how many years? 13 years ago. So Byron Bay, which absolutely loved, did a few days there, then went up to Surfers Paradise, and I loved Surfers Paradise when I visited. I think Surfers Paradise is kind of what you think Australia is going to be like in your head.
Yeah.
The beaches and the water and everything. And then Brisbane for a few days. And then Noosa in the Sunshine Coast. And after that, I can't think where I would have gone to. It was maybe Rainbow Beach.
Yep.
And then obviously did Fraser Island from Rainbow Beach, which I absolutely loved. And then I loved it, yeah. And then I went to Airlie Beach and did the Whitsundays from there.
Okay.
And then after Airlie Beach, is it Bundaberg? There's not much
Oh, yeah,
there.
yeah, you went inland, yep. So then you went inland to go to Bundy, a little bit.
Yeah,
That's where they have the big. It's a rum actually. It's a famous town for
that's
rum.
it.
Did you go to the distillery there where they make the rum?
Yeah, it was really good actually.
Yeah,
So enjoyed that. And then I did go inland a bit more and went and stayed on a farm for a few days, which was quite cool. We did quad biking and different things like that on a farm, which was quite fun.
yep,
And then up to Cairns. They're the
yeah.
main things I can remember. There might have been little stops in between.
Well, again, I did that trip a few times when I travelled. But some of those places are great. Yeah, and there's so much to do over there. All right, so you went there, you came back home, and then what happened?
So I came home and all I wanted to do was go back to Australia. Before, when I went on the tourist visa, I didn't know about the working holiday visa. I think had I have known, I would have gone over on the working holiday visa straight away. So I came home and started university studying media studies, and I just didn't want to be there. I knew that I just wanted to keep traveling and seeing new places. So I actually dropped out of university, got a job, saved up again, and then went back to Australia on the working holiday visa.
Okay. And how long ago were you like saving and that before you came back out in the work and holiday visa?
So I think I was home for about a year,
All right. So,
saving up.
when you say budget, saving up for any of the working holiday visa people, what'd you have? How much did you arrive with?
Think I had about £3,000, and that
Okay.
was, and then obviously the flight on top of that. And I think even going back, that would have been about 11 years ago. I think the flights were still about £1,000. They
Okay.
haven't changed much.
Yeah. That's good. All right. So then you rock up, and what state did you arrive in first?
So I actually flew into Melbourne this time because I didn't visit Melbourne when I originally went.
Yep.
And I actually didn't like Melbourne at first.
Oi,
So
be
I know
careful.
you might not like that, Wes. It was funny. So I kind of went full circle. So I started in Melbourne, and I think it was because, in my opinion, Melbourne is a little bit European,
Yep.
and I didn't feel like I was in Australia. I know that sounds strange, but I just didn't get that Australian feeling. So, and I didn't meet anyone that I clicked with, and I think that's a really big thing for anyone that's going to go on the working holiday or travel, or even just, going over to live. I think a lot of the time it's not actually the place where you are, it's the people that you meet.
I agree.
And I just wasn't meeting anyone that I was clicking with. So I had spent the summer working in a nightclub in Mallorca, and I met a DJ there, and he was going to be in Australia at the same time as me. And he said, message me, we'll meet up. And I didn't really think anything of it, to be honest. But I messaged him when I was in Melbourne, said I wasn't really enjoying it. And he said, I'm in somewhere called Coolangatta on the Gold Coast. Like, come up here and I'll help find you a job. And I'd never heard of it, never heard of Coolangatta, but I thought, why not? So I booked a flight for the next day and flew up there. And I ended up staying there for 6 months then.
Nice part of the world to be.
Yeah, I loved it. He really helped me out. He knew a cafe owner, an ice cream shop owner, and got me a job in them two places. And then he also got me a job in a nightclub on the weekends. So I kind of did a little bit of everything up there and loved it.
Nah, good stuff. Good stuff. He was spinning around. He was spinning his wheels, wasn't he? Making it happen for you, which is good.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you were down there. So you were doing a bit of hospo work and all that, and then
hmm
you mentioned that you were in South Australia. So what happened then after Goldie?
So after the Gold Coast, I actually went to do strawberry picking to do my farm work to get my second year. I
Hmm.
lasted about a week, and it was such hard work. It was
What were you picking?
pruning. It was strawberries, but we were pruning them. So it was obviously going along and just cutting off any dead leaves or any bad bits of growth. And it was backbreaking work because obviously strawberry plants are just off the ground.
Okay, yeah,
So you're bent over all day long for, 10 plus hours a day.
yeah.
and I just thought this isn't for me. So left there, and I had some friends in Brisbane. So I went and lived in Brisbane for about 6 weeks. And then my
Sorry,
friends
Izzy.
went,
Just going to
yeah.
go back a step. So when you're on the strawberry farm, are you there with like, just describe it. Like, obviously we've got small little plants and you get a little bad,
Hmm.
a bad back. But are you doing this fruit picking with heaps of other let's just say poms, any other more backpackers? Or was it just
Yes.
yourself? Because obviously it's seasonal. So
Yeah.
we. So you got the farm that you're picking at. How many people were picking on a day, and where were you sleeping and all that sort of stuff? What was the setup like?
Yes. So it was in Mooloolaba on the Sunshine Coast. Beautiful
Great place.
place. Yeah, beautiful. So I stayed in a hostel in Mooloolaba, and then we got people that staying in the hostel could work on the farm. So we used to travel by sort of minivan from the hostel to the farm, and then I'd say there's probably about 30 people working there a day.
Okay.
And it was just fields and fields of strawberry plants, rows and rows, and you'd all kind of be on one row each doing the work. And it was fun being in Mooloolaba. You got to go out in the evenings and go down to the beach and things. But it was just the work was I thought I can't do this for 3 months straight. No way.
Yeah, lots of people end up inland picking fruit and that, and they end up sort of. I've heard a bit, a few Irish people staying in a barn for 3 months, doing their harvest work. And anyway, the stories they were
Yeah,
telling me they got up to, they just go, it was pure
yeah,
boredom in the middle of nowhere, but they got to save
uh-huh.
lots of money. Like that was their thing. Like they were
Yes.
like, we're saving money for the skilled visa. We're just going to put ourselves out here. There's all sorts of ones. That's why I thought I'll just ask what
Yes.
sort of
I'll
accommodation, but hostel's a good idea.
yeah, I'll get back. So that was kind of a bit like the farm work that I ended up doing when I was in Barossa Valley. So we'll get to that in a minute when yeah, it was fun. It was interesting.
I bet.
Yeah. So I went to Brisbane, and then so my friends that I lived with in Brisbane, they were going to Barossa Valley to do their farm work. They went there, and then I had a friend going to Bali. So I said, I'll go to Bali. Why not? And that was when I then met Aaron. So Aaron was with, so it was a friend of mine from home. Aaron had met him working together in Sydney, and we all ended up going to Bali together on a holiday for 2 weeks. So then we went from Bali to Barossa Valley because my friends had said that there was work in the factories there where they were working, and it counted towards your 88 days. So yeah, Aaron and I ended up going to Barossa Valley after Bali.
Nice.
And then, yeah, and then we were all staying in a hostel. So you sort of went to the hostel, and they would work with the local factories to get people work. So I had a couple of different jobs. The first job I had was within a cucumber packing factory, and I was the only one from the hostel that worked there. That was okay actually. It was fairly easy work. It was a small factory. There was only three of us that worked there in total, so that was fine. But Aaron had got a job in a potato packing factory, and they paid more and they did more hours. So Aaron managed to get me a job in that factory that he was working in. So we did that, and we did work a lot. We worked 6 days a week, usually minimum 10 hours a day. I remember one day we did 16 hours.
It's a lot,
So it
isn't
was
it?
a lot of work.
Were,
Yeah,
were
it
you paid,
was.
and you paid hourly, or you paid per like, sometimes you get paid for packing, cutting, whatever.
Mm.
Was it hourly rate, or was it like what you did?
We were lucky, so we were on hourly pay, so we were earning good money. I think it was about $22 an hour, and this is
Back then,
going
that's
back.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was good money, so you couldn't complain. And I think after I'd had the experience with the strawberry picking, that I was like, this is great.
Yeah, you often hear like if you're in a couple, it's good. If you're not pissing up all your money, you end up having a bit of
Mm,
money to save because 3 months is if you're doing lots of hours on a good rate and your accommodation's cheap, you can come out with a bit of savings
yeah,
in 3 months if you put your head down, and then obviously you got the next, you get the next year for your visa, which is good. But yeah,
exactly.
carry on.
So yeah, we were there, a bit like what you were saying, Wes, you're in the middle of nowhere. We actually did live on, Lisa, you might know it, the Chateau Tanunda. The
Okay.
hostel was basically there. So it was, beautiful scenery, rolling hills everywhere you looked, but there was nothing to do there. So we, were just in the hostel drinking, and yeah, you just kind of had to make your own fun, I guess, because it was nothing to do there.
Yeah,
There was one
perfect.
pub, I think, in the area. There was one pub. That was it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's it. I guess that's what it is. You got to need big fields to pick fruit and do all that. All right. So you ended up doing that, and then you got your What happens after that? You complete
Y-
your harvest work. You stay in Australia
Yeah,
long. How long were you here for
yeah.
in total on the work and holiday visa?
I did my 2 years in one go. So I left there and went to Sydney. Spent all the money that I'd saved in Sydney,
Probably in day
but
one.
had a great time. I ended up living in Sydney then for 7 months,
Okay.
and I loved Sydney. Didn't want to leave, but you're on a time limit, aren't you? So then I actually had a job with taxback.com. So
Yep.
they were helping backpackers to claim their tax back, and they actually paid a friend and I to travel up the East Coast at the end of the tax year, and we went through all the hostels on the East Coast promoting their services. So that was pretty
Mhm.
fun.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then went to Darwin and stayed there for a little bit, and then that's where I went full circle and ended up doing my last 3 months in Melbourne.
Okay. Back to the Gracelands. Hey,
Yeah, and loved it. Absolutely loved it.
like you say, it's who you click with. It's who you click with. No.
Definitely. And when I went back, we were living with friends that we'd kind of met along the way. So it was friends that I lived with in Sydney, and one friend that I lived with in Coolangatta. We all ended up getting an apartment together. So yeah, completely different when you've got people there that you know and obviously click with.
So I'm just gonna ask you a couple of tips, right? What you would recommend, like little
Hmm.
tips and that. But while you have a bit of a think, I think my biggest tip would be if you're coming here to Australia and you work on holiday, if you're looking for a bit of travel, whatever you want to do, just keep an eye on the weather. Obviously, there's different parts of Australia which are really good. So if you're coming in an Australian summer month, so let's say from December to sort of March, you want to stick away from the top of Australia. All right. So,
Yeah,
your brooms and everything like that, because it's just so humid where your Melbourne's, your Sydney, um, I guess your South Australia, it's hot. It is hot. Like what are we, the 22nd of the 2nd, 2024. And, in Melbourne, we've had a 33-degree day, which is pretty good.
mm,
But if we were in the top of Australia right now, it'd be very humid. It's conditions that aren't very friendly. That's what I found. And you hear
yes,
people getting there at those, that time of the year, saying it's just too hot. It's too hot. But if you're coming to head to Australia and you're looking from sort of April, sort of September, well, I can tell you now, Melbourne gets quite a chill. It's cold,
yeah,
but the top of
yeah,
Australia is just gorgeous. It's buzzing. It's nice. The weather's amazing. The sunsets are perfect, and you'll see with the Daisy, like lots of the elderly, I guess, people who've retired in Melbourne, they just take their camper vans and all that and shoot at the
yeah.
top of Australia. That's what they do. Go away for the winter, come back and are happy. So that's my little tip for the young ones. What do you got?
God, I've got a few. So I think the big thing is, like I said, it's sometimes if you don't click with people, then even if it's not moved city, maybe move to a different hostel, try and meet people because you do need. I went on my own both times I went to Australia, and you do need to meet people that you click with, I think, to fully enjoy it. It can be quite lonely sometimes, but if that isn't happening in one place, then move to somewhere else, and it definitely will happen. I think give things time. I think quite often I did it myself because I had such a great time when I traveled the East Coast. I kind of went back and thought it would be the exact same experience, but it did take me a little bit more time to find my feet when I went on the working holiday. So, and I guess it's the same for people moving over there permanently. It does take time. You're completely having a change of life. So don't expect that everything's going to just fall into place on day one.
Okay. Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's hard. Like I think, look, I think working holidays, it's It's good. And then when you're here, like obviously we've got the relocation website and, down in the centre
Mm,
clients, we always have meetups and everything. It's good because you've got sort of two, I don't know, I've got this like little theory, Daisy, you'll probably laugh, but I sort of feel you got sort of three lives. My wife,
yeah.
if she ever listens to this, she's going to be shut up, Wes. I'm sick of hearing you say it, but I sort of stick by it. I think you got your first life where you do, you do what you got to do. You go off, you travel, you're a kid, then you're a bit older, teenager, then you're a young adult, whatever. You can make your mistakes. You do what you got to do. Have as much fun, and then I guess you got your second life where you become a parent or
Hmm.
or a partner. You got to probably work. And you're working. You're sort of setting up, and then you got your third life, which is when you can retire and feel comfortable and settle. And I think your second life's like the hardest, and depending on your situation. I mean, I'm extremely blessed. I've got three young kids, so life's kind of fun in that way. But definitely hanging for the for the retirement side as well. It'd be nice not to work and be in a country like Australia where you have got the flexibility of, if you wanted to, you could be warm all year round. And again, that
Yes.
totally depends where you live. I mean, you mentioned Byron Bay before. I lived in a little town called Yamba, which is one of my favourite places ever in Australia. The fishing's good, the surfing's awesome, but the actual the average temperature all year round was 27. So you don't get scorching hot, humid weather like you do at the top of
Hmm.
Australia. But you're right on the point. It's actually like Byron Bay. It's the most eastern point of Australia. Most people have walked out there to the little lighthouse and been there. Yamba's about an hour south of that. So you get the weather, but you haven't got, but it's a very small little town. You've got to, I think when I was there, it was many years ago. Now there's a McDonald's, I heard. Macca's have wrecked that one
Hmm.
again. But yeah, towns that didn't have those traffic lights, they're just so small. But that was a great climate, and I think that helped as well because your weather's, I don't know, your weather
Yes.
just goes, really well. So people are coming to us, Daisy, with all sorts of, working holiday, go off and have your fun. Now you're sort of starting that sort of second life, I guess. That was the point I was
Yeah.
longly trying to make, where you and your partner are now in the process of, you've used your work and holiday visas. Now you're serious about migrating to Australia. So your partner's a carpenter, that's correct?
Yes.
Yep. So he has so you've started the journey. So you've returned home. So how many years were you home before you started to start the process with us to get your skills assessment done?
So we were home. It's a bit of a funny one as well, Wes. So we originally were going to start the process then COVID hit, and obviously all the borders got closed. And for various reasons, we just didn't start it then. So we officially started it this time last year, really, last January, and that we would have been home for about 6 years, I think.
Okay. It's a long time, but I guess gives you
It
time to
is.
save. But you know what it's like. You get stuck with life, don't you? You know, you
It
sort of
is,
start
and
seeing everyone, but yeah.
there was various. So Aaron actually trained to be a carpenter when we got home from Australia, so he wasn't a carpenter before.
And that was
So
with the
one,
intent of migrating as a carpenter.
absolutely, yeah, that was the whole reason why he did it. So we knew we wanted to go back and live there. So we knew we needed obviously a skill that they would need. So Aaron decided to become a carpenter. So there's the 2 years training, and then obviously the 2 years training doesn't count as experience towards the skills assessment. So then we needed to wait until he had enough post qualification experience in order to be able to actually make the move.
So, okay, yeah. So just going back on that, like it's the skills assessment, the training does class as it, but there's obviously different things. If you've got an NBQ level 3, we need to see a minimum of 3 years to process the
Mm,
skills assessments. No NBQ level 3, we need to see 5 years. When you're
yeah,
claiming points for work experience, immigration are going to pretend the first 3 years is classed as training. So obviously more
yeah.
years you've got, because it's one of those things, isn't it? The skills assessment's a part of the process of applying for a permanent visa. But I always
Hmm.
tell my clients, there's no point paying for a skills assessment if it's not going to lead to a visa. Because it's all
No.
well and good having a skills assessment, but if it's not going to lead to a visa, what's the point? So let's run through your partner's points. So to get your invite, how many points did you actually have? And if you remember, I mean, I can break them down for you, but do you remember what score he got in his English and everything?
Yeah, so we had 75 points in total.
It's a good score.
And yeah, and that was because Aaron got 20 points on the English.
Yep, clever, good.
And that was massive. That was, in all honesty, he'll kill me for saying this. But I think that was a big part of why it took us so long to actually start the process, because when we first looked at starting the process in COVID, Aaron did one English test lesson on YouTube and
Yeah.
miraculously decided he no longer wanted to move to Australia.
Mm.
And I knew it was because of the English test. And I did understand he's not an academic, he's more of a hands-on person. He's never done well in exams before, and it was all on his shoulders. I
Yeah,
couldn't do the English test. It had to be him.
yeah.
Um,
Do you know what, Daisy? Like it's nuts because we get it all the time. I'm English. Why do I need to do an English test? And
mm,
it's not. Look, the English test is reading, writing, speaking, listening. It's not teaching people how to read, write, speak, and listen. Now,
no.
I don't think I don't know the last time I picked up a pen. I use a computer to type, and when I was a plumber,
Hmm.
you hardly do it and everything like that. So, my handwriting's horrible, but it's not. I don't think I've never done an English test because I haven't had to do it, but I'll be fearful of doing it. And
Hmm.
I always reckon that the boys that come back, and so many of these families that are listening, you'll all agree, and congratulations to the lads as well who probably don't think they're academic; it's not their strength. That sense of fulfillment when you get that 20 points is
Yeah.
what a moment. As soon as they get their skills assessment and their English test, when we had the walk-in centre in London, Daisy, they'd come out of that skills assessment. The assessor might have said, "Oh, look, you've done really well. We'll get the results to you soon." And they'd come out and they'd just look at you like, "Done my English test. I've done my skills
Mm,
assessment. Am I done?" And we're like, "Yeah, you're done, buddy." And you can just see the relief. But
yeah,
what an achievement, to it's something he's not strong at, and to get 20 points, it's definitely achievable. But
it
how many
is.
attempts did he do? Did he go back and do the second, or did he do a few?
Mm, that was his third. So he got 10 points on his first and second try, and he had just missed both times getting the 20 points.
Okay, it's a
And
very good start.
yeah, and he was like, I might as well do it again and try and get the 20 points because it will make a big difference.
Yeah.
So that was massive. And I had said to him, you focus on the English test and I will do as much as I can to support with the paperwork for the skills assessment.
All right.
And then I've done all of the other sort of paperwork for the visa. You focus on the English and I'll do as much as I can for everything else to take the stress away.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. All right. So, okay. So we got 75 points. Which state did you put into?
We actually put into WA, Queensland, New South Wales, and South Australia because we
And
weren't fussed where we'd live.
okay. And and which state got you?
Queensland, which was our ideal
Wow.
state, that was where we wanted. Yeah, it did feel like a miracle when it came
Yeah. Yeah.
through.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. All right. So the emotional side, because it's an absolute nightmare. Now, you were quite lucky, actually, because you got your skills assessment done, English test done after a couple of attempts, which is pretty good. But going back, I think at the start, you said that you only had to wait. So you put in your invite, and within a couple of months, you got an invitation.
Yeah, we were lucky looking back. So our skills assessment, that all took about 5 months in total to get a pass from starting the paperwork to getting the everything passed. And then in total, it was about 5 months for getting an invite. But to be honest, most of those months, it was when all the states were shut. So
Yeah.
we put
Yeah.
them in
That's
at the end of May, and then they pretty much shut in June and kind
yeah.
of didn't reopen then until maybe the end of August, September time.
Which is
So we
madness because all
weren't,
the other years they usually open July. This is the thing with
yeah,
immigration. People think, oh, someone did a couple of years ago and all that. It's just like this massive wheeling thing. Like, I did a webinar the other day. I don't know if you saw that one.
yes, yeah, I did.
That was interesting, that one, because that was with South Australia government. Um,
Yeah,
and Daisy, like, well, I'm glad you saw it because we did the webinar, the monthly webinar before, and they were talking. They sort of said, they might come anyway. We sort of run out of time, and then they just called me the next day after that webinar and said that was, we sort of felt that's a good platform. Would would we be able to present? And I was like, well, let's do one better. Can I interview you? Because I sort of felt that we've got all these clients at the moment waiting to get invites, and
Yeah.
yet they cut the numbers by 75%. But then you have
Mm.
this, but then they're saying they need all these people. So it was really cool to have. Oh, you saw it. It was really cool. So I got to
It was
people
great.
type the questions, and I'll get to answer them. I felt like I was, I don't know, someone important for a few minutes. And their reply was so professional, and the way that they explained everything, they did so well at
Yeah.
SA Gov. These are the people that give the invites. It was an
Yeah.
honour to sort of to be able to ask them, and they were so good with what they said. They the way that they explained it, and they gave us a debrief as well, which we were able to share with our clients, which was even better. The fact that they did the debrief too, but in short, it was sort of, look, the numbers are going to be low because over the pandemic we had so many immigration are backlogged, and they want to start granting visas. So we're going to
Mm.
invite less people. This is immigration's, what South Australia said, that immigration and their belief is that come July, the new financial year, the numbers will be up, but they're even talking about maybe doing a plan for 2 years. Then they were talking about building usually they build 8,000 new houses a year in South Australia. They're pushing it to 16,000. All the work that they've got coming up, and the amount
Yeah.
of occupations. And the good news is that they're still doing 2 more invitation rounds before July. I think lots of people feel that it's over, and WA closed,
Mm.
and it's hard. Like, imagine, I mean, you're lucky because now you're on the home straight, right? And
Yes.
lots of our clients are waiting for invites. It's hard being a migration business because we only charge our fees in stages. But we've still got the same
Yes.
staff on, so we want to push immigration, as and the states to get a move on. But we get the emotional side of how you have to put your life on hold with that
Mm.
dream. And it just sucks. Like, some clients are obviously different to others, and they might sort of come across that it's like our fault. And, we sort of feel like, well, our job's to process visas.
Yes.
And, we'll, send them in, and then it's immigration's job to grant. And I really hope, I remember Jenny Baker, she's just awesome. Like, before the pandemic, I'd chat to her on the drive home from work, catch up on what's happening that day. And we sort of love what we do, migrating, I guess. And she'll be able to say, oh, Billy had his invite. So I assume this week we're going to get, Tim, Suzanne, whoever else is going to get it. Or she'll be like, oh, what's his name? Philip got his visa granted. So he lodged it on this date. So I'm assuming this week we're going to get these 10. And it was just
Mm.
awesome. And Jenny being Jenny, she was spot on with it all. And now it's changed, which is so
Yeah.
frustrating. But how do you
Yeah.
feel about it? Like, that I guess for you and Aaron, like how are you dealing with it at the moment? The waiting, and when are you expecting, or when, with the current environment, when would you feel that you're going to get your visa granted?
So yeah, going back to the emotional part, the waiting for the invite was the worst. That was the worst part because you've got I was saying to Aaron, because I'd seen all the stuff, they'd reduced the numbers. I said, we might not actually get an invite. And that is completely out of our control. There's nothing we can do. So that for me was the hardest part. And, it isn't long, 5 months in hindsight, but when you're in it and you don't know when that invite is coming,
You were
that's the hard
lucky.
part. So lucky. So, so, so lucky.
No,
Yeah.
I'm talking about being interviewed on the podcast.
Yeah.
No, it's just joking. But you were quite
Yeah,
lucky.
I know. We were, and I know that. And now I think the hardest thing now is the not be it feels like you can't plan because you don't know when that visa grant's going to come in.
Are
There's
you
a lot of
selling a
us.
house or anything?
We are, yeah. So our house is
Yeah.
currently on the market. So that's one thing. And we are in the lucky position that we're going to move in with family once the house sells.
Okay,
So
that's nice.
we've got that. We want to get rid of the house so that we haven't got anything sort of tying us down.
Have you got
But we
pets?
are also, yeah, that's the other thing this has been probably the most tricky part. We're bringing a pet over. So we've got a dog called Pepper and she's a Shih Tzu
Yeah.
and she hasn't got a flat nose, but her breed are classed as flat nose breed. So most airlines won't fly her. So that's
Okay.
been the hardest. This is her getting Pepper over is probably the trickiest part of the whole process because we can't she has to go into quarantine for 30 days. Obviously, she has to go on a flight that will allow her. but how do we know when to book her into quarantine because we don't know when we're going to be there? And
Yeah.
I think at the moment, the quarantine spaces are being booked up to 6 months in advance. So it's really hard not knowing when we're going to get the visa grant. When do we book her flight and when do we book her into quarantine so it all coincides with each other? So I think that has been a really tough part for us.
Yeah, it's hard. It is. It's an extra thing, like having a pet, and it's not cheap either, too. Like it's
No.
yeah. But when they get here, like I know Pets Abroad do an awesome job with it all. Are you using Andre in that for Pets Abroad?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's good. He's good
He's
because
so helpful.
yeah, and he always sends me like I know he sends all of our clients. He does lots of our clients, and he goes. You see the reactions of the dogs when they arrive, and especially if you live in, away from the city, maybe on a beach or something. It's this whole new world to the pet. But what I will say
Mm.
too is for people coming over and everything like that, there's little things that you got to remember. Okay, so if it's hot for us and everything like that on the beach and everything like that and on the concrete, unfortunately, I hate it when you see owners walking their dogs and the owners have shoes on and it's a hot day and the poor
Uh,
pets are there on the hot concrete. You just think, wow, like get them
yes.
off. Do you see they're walking
Yeah.
funny? They're sort of galloping like a
Yeah.
bull. That makes sense, or whatever the word is.
We
Like galloping.
know. Yeah.
Yeah,
She'll have to be taken out kind of 5, 6 a.m. and then later on in the evening in the peak
yeah. They
summer. Yeah.
like they do adjust. Just be smart with it. But obviously, if you're on
Yeah.
the beach and all that, and it's like this massive, huge new world for the pets as well. So, all right, well. Look, what's the first thing you're going to do when you get back? Well, when you get back, when you arrive in Oz.
First thing, I want an Australian coffee.
Really, that's it. You did like Melbourne. That's what they talk about in Melbourne. Coffee.
Yeah, Melbourne's the best coffee. So, and I just want to go down to the beach and just, I think, breathe a, sigh of relief that we're finally here.
It's that getting off the tarmac, knowing you're here. You've spent 30 hours from
Yes,
door to door. You're knackered,
yes,
depending on your stopover, in case there are any technical people listening. But, it is about 30, I always say to
yeah,
family and friends, they're coming when we're in the UK, if you're visiting, it's about 30 hours door to door. You
mm-hmm,
sleep, you're lucky to sleep a couple of hours, 0 if you've got
yeah,
kids. But then you
yes,
just get there and you just feel that sense of relief. And I wish you so well, Daisy, because this is something that you've really worked hard for, and good work for Aaron as well. Like I think it's good. And look, migration's hard. If it was if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And it's getting through
exactly,
the stages. And there's no question, probably this year, the start of 2024, and anything from sort of the end of 2022, it's been really challenging. So for the people who are getting through it and everything like that, hopefully these podcasts help. And things happen. Like you will get there, providing you got the points and you get the right information. But Daisy, thank you so much, and I can't wait to see you in Oz.
yeah. Thanks for having me.